One. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you again this week. We're going to take a little bit of a detour in our norm and we're going to end up in a great spot, but we're going to take an interesting way to get there. And I have a question for you to start with. And I found the expert that's going to answer this for us because I don't feel qualified to answer this question. And the question really is, how important is your physical part of your life in relation to being successful? It feels like a lot of times entrepreneurs, we have to give up on something. Sometimes we give up on family. Sometimes we give up on health. Sometimes we give up on relationships. And I'm guessing if you're like me, a lot of the listeners here give up on their health early. And I found somebody that thinks that's probably not a really good idea. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Shaun Hadsall. How are you today, my friend?
Great, man. Thanks for having me, Dave. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. You're CEO and founder of Get Lean After 40. So I'm assuming 40 is the age, right? So you're talking to me specifically, but a bunch of people around the world, and you're better known as the Ripped Grandpa. So we got ourselves a fun show today. So fill us in if you could, Shaun, on how in the world did you enter this area? How did that personal journey look for you?
Well, it was back when I was fighting for custody rights of my daughter, who is now 32, and
Okay.
she was only 4 at the time, just turning 5. And I was wanting to be part of her life, and their family had a history of kind of just keeping the father out of the picture. So I was legally fighting. And of course, I had used fitness as an anchor after I got out of high school. I was just a blue collar guy. And it was kind of just like filled in the missing gap for sports for me. And then one day I was checking out at a grocery store and I picked up a magazine called Muscle Media back when people read magazines. And by Bill Phillips had a contest called Body for Life. It was actually the second year he had the contest, and I
Okay.
started reading a story about a guy who was a father, and it echoed my situation. He was boozing it up and eating shit food, and not taking care of his family. He entered the contest, and he became the father his kids wanted him to be, and it inspired me to enter the contest. And so I entered the contest, and 90 days later, out of over 23,000 finishers, I was first runner-up grand champion. I had
Wow.
six-pack abs for the first time in my life. I'd gained 5 pounds of muscle. I'd lost over 20 pounds of belly fat. But that really was just a mirror, a reflection of what had
Sure.
happened to every other area of my life. And
Yeah.
that's when I discovered that fitness really is the anchor. And so I always have a saying that stronger, focused fitness equals stronger faith, family, friends, finances, and future. I talk about the
Wow.
6 F's, right? And so
Sure.
at the end of that contest, I was looking in the mirror and I saw something amazing. But what was more amazing is that I had joint legal custody rights of my daughter. And she was actively part of my life, and I was able to legally enforce those visitation rights.
Yeah.
And I stopped hanging around all the wrong people. I was
Okay.
surrounded with like-minded people. I landed a brand new career. I had the courage to face some ownership of some mistakes that I had made with relationships, and I faced those relationships and I mended those broken bridges. And I literally paid off most of my debt during that contest. And so that's when I discovered it was just the anchor that leaked over like a faucet of discipline into every
Sure.
other area of the life. And then, of course, that led to me being an entrepreneur and starting my own business and
Wow.
landing a fitness modeling career to start with. Yeah. So,
That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah.
Well, I think you had everybody excited, Shaun, until you said the word ownership. And then all of a sudden I heard some brake lights going. I saw the brake lights. I'm like, uh-oh. We as entrepreneurs, it's super easy, especially in today's world, to kind of blame everybody else. We can blame the competitor. We can blame our customer. We can blame our team. We can blame the government, the weather. We have a great array of things we can blame. Do you help people in this situation to find that ownership piece? Because I feel like if you don't start there, you're really not going to be able to move forward into that. Like you talked about, I had some things in my life that I wanted to change, maybe some habits or some things that I didn't feel like were going to add value moving forward. So for somebody listening, is that something that you generally start with and help people with to be able to kind of get that ownership started?
It's the beginning of the process because, It's silly, right? The whole Henry Ford, if you believe it or you don't, you're right. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it starts with the mindset. I mean, I could talk about a couple very compelling studies proving the power of mindset when it comes to fitness or any area of the life, especially whether it's the placebo effect or just our belief system. I always say it's all about your BS, your
Yeah.
belief system, right?
Yeah.
And so the first thing that we have to do is we can't play the blame game. So people are either blaming their circumstances, or when it comes to fitness, they're blaming their genetics, right? And
Yeah.
so if you look at my entire family, God bless them, I love them all, but they're all fat. I have one cousin that's like me because he lives like I do, right? So,
Yeah.
genetics load the gun, our environment and our decisions pull that trigger, right? So we all
Okay.
have good bad genes and we turn them on and off. So it becomes, excuse-itis, right? And so, yes, I address it right out of the gate with people and we talk about mindset. And because literally I could give you the perfect plan to follow. I could promise you that once you had your ideal body, you would also have your ideal life in every other area, business, whatever it is. But if you don't believe it, and you don't have the right belief system when you start, it's just not going to happen.
Well, and I don't want to bypass what you just said because you really use physical fitness as a platform for everything else. Is that did I hear that right? I want to make sure that we don't miss that because some people look at physical fitness as like just a chunk of their life. I mean, what's a healthy way to look at fitness, physical fitness? What's a healthy way for us to look at our physical being there?
It's a great question. And I think the way to look at it is that the journey is the destination, and that we
Okay.
have to come and approach it as a lifestyle of leanness and not follow a diet. So if we spell out the word diet, 4 letters, we drop that T, that's what's left, DIE.
Yeah.
94% of everybody who follows a diet, this is the facts. I mean, I don't care what diet it is. I don't care how magical it is. I don't care if it's your religion. But at the end of the day, 94% of people will gain all or more of their weight back after following a diet. So when it comes to fitness, you have to begin with the end in mind. That's why I don't do diets. I created something called Rip Grandpa Carb Cycling that we use, and it can be used as a lifestyle. And then, of course, on the exercise side of things, as an entrepreneur and a high performer, you have to figure out how to weave it into your lifestyle so that it's installed into your daily DNA. Just like
Yeah.
taking kids to practice, just like
Yeah.
showing up for an appointment, showing up for a Zoom call, it has to be scheduled, it has to be planned, and it has to be weaved in. And of course,
Yeah.
it can't be a part-time job. So that's why I teach people to do it in 3 to 4 hours a week. By investing that 3 to 4 hours a week, less than 5% of your time every single week, knowing that you'll automatically be a better human in every other area, I think that's a worthy investment.
Yeah, totally. And like we were talking about before we jumped on, we're in the Midwest and it's in the middle of winter and it's cold and it's super easy to look outside and go, yeah, no, not today. Right.
Right.
So, is there some just pure, I mean, for the person that's not, regimented, that's not like ultra focused, I mean, are there some things that we need to kind of recalibrate our brain to do before we start this journey?
Well, I think it's just like any habit that you build, it's like a muscle that gets stronger. But we also have to understand psychologically the world that we live in. And when we wake
Yeah,
up, willpower and motivation is like the battery on our phone. It
yeah,
depletes as the day goes on. So, depending on your personality, you know, I know people who love to work late at night and they're amazing at it. And I've seen one of my buddies built a multi-million-dollar supplement company working, I'd get text at 4 in the morning from him. Other people like myself, I'm going to perform better early in the day. You have to
yeah,
identify that based on your personality. And for me, it's eat the frog. If you don't, if you know you're going to procrastinate, you're going to skip the exercise, you're going to, you need to schedule it in early and get it out of the way early and understand that it's going to set the tone for the rest of your day. Now, with that being
yeah,
said, there's certain personalities where me nowadays, I like waking up early, getting my deep work done before there's interruptions. I have 10 grandkids before they start
yeah,
screaming and running around upstairs. The one or two of them ends up here almost every day. We're very close to them, right? So I schedule my workout later in the afternoon around 2 o'clock because that's when my mind is fried from the 5 hours of deep work and I need
gotcha.
to take that break. So again, this is a case by case basis, but at the end of the
Fair.
day, it go back to honoring your self promise, right? Making a self promise to it and then honoring that self promise just like you would with your kids or your family or your wife.
Fair. Well, and I think I mean, we encourage people to put as much on their calendar as possible so that, it's interesting. Meetings with other people are on people's calendars, right? Like this meeting for you and I was on my calendar, it was probably on yours. But then it's crazy how like the rest of the day we're not like scheduling behaviors, or we're not scheduling things like working out. I'm guessing that the research shows that if you do get it on your calendar, you have a much higher likelihood of having it happen. I mean, I've seen that outside of working out. I just didn't know from that standpoint if that's
Well, a
still.
lot of this goes back to accountability, Dave. I mean, again, you have to know your personality. Some people are driven to do it on their own. I always have been because of the benefits I got out of that contest years ago.
Yeah,
Right. So where other people got to put skin in the game. This is why I charge my high ticket guys 3,800 to 10K to work with me because, they have everything dialed in except their body. Right.
yeah,
So they look like a
yeah,
sloppy ass mess when they look in the mirror, but they're rich. They got the trophy wife. They got the trophy house. They're wearing the Rolex. So we
yeah,
got to make their business match their body match their business. So the only
sure,
way that a lot of them guys are going to do that is put skin in the game. And a lot of them I go towards the 10K with because 3,800 is like $100 bill to them.
yeah,
Right. So it's just not enough. Like I have $3,800 guys that will ghost my ass, and I'm just like, okay, that guy need to put more skin in the game.
right,
So again, it depends at what level you're at, but it goes back to accountability. When you pay attention.
yeah. Well, so again, this concept is probably foreign to a lot of people, the actual importance of our physical being in our successful entrepreneur journey. And there seems to be times where we just, let things slide. Maybe we don't go to the dentist for a year or two or three, and then we pay for it down the road, right? It's like, oh my gosh, right? So I'm curious, are there some simple things that we can be more aware of throughout our day to try to help us, at least be cognizant of this piece? Because I feel like I'm a black and white thinker here, Shaun. So I'm thinking all or nothing. Like I'm either going to be in the gym 20 hours a day or I'm going to scrap the whole idea. That's a black and white thinker. I'm not saying it's right, but that's how I think. So how do you graze something down? How do you do that? Walk me through or help us understand that 4 hour concept. What that looks like, because that just seems like 4 hours a day. I thought you said 4 hours a day,
I
and it's
did. I
four
meant
hours
four
a
hours a
week,
week. Yeah, yeah. Three to
right?
four hours
It's
a
like,
week.
wow, that's crazy. I mean, so how do I work through that in my brain? Because I'm thinking I have to just go all out, go nuts, go from the gym to the bike back to the gym, and then I mean, how do you kind of balance that out?
I love your questions. Um, I am huge on acronyms.
Okay.
And so I have an acronym CWESP, QUESP, right? It's like going on a quest. It's just spelled differently. And this is an easy way for people to remember stuff. Now, the acronym itself stands for calorie deficit, water, exercise, sleep, and protein. These are the 5 levers we must pull on a daily basis if we want to keep our fitness and our health dialed in. Now,
Okay.
in each of those letters, we could go deep on mechanisms, but at the end of the day, if you're not doing those 5 things, you can exercise 4 hours a day, but if you don't have the other ones in place, none of it matters. And so, an example is my business coach who runs a $300 million a year ad agency, and I coach him on his fitness. And about 3 months ago, I had it with him because his blood work was so terrible. He's got 2 young kids, married to a girl about 15 years younger than him. And I'm like, dude, you're going to freaking die. You're not going to see
Yeah.
your grandkids. You're not going to see your kids grow up and graduate. And he said, Shaun, can you just be my friend for a second? And I said, and not my coach. I'm like, sure. And he
Yeah.
said, I don't have the bandwidth to even think about your carb cycling days. I do a carb up day, I do a carb down day, I do a carb deplete day. So I said,
Yeah.
dude, all we have to do is just put that aside right now and go on a
Yeah.
quest,
Yeah.
right? So every day, make sure you're burning off more than you're taking in, calorie deficit. It's the law of thermodynamics. If you are not losing weight, you have to burn off more than you take in. That is going to be why I don't care what you say, start tracking your stuff. Water, getting adequate water, at least 100 ounces a day. Exercise, at least 10,000 steps a day. So you don't even have to worry about getting to the gym. Just get a step tracker, buy a cheap Fitbit, put it on your wrist, and get 10,000 steps a day because you're going to live 10 to 15 years longer just doing that and you're way more likely to keep off the weight, right? Sleep, going to sleep and waking up at the same time, trying to get 7 or 8 hours, common sense, and then protein. This is one where it's getting more popular, it's getting more mainstream now, but this is the one where people miss the boat.
Yeah.
But you have to have adequate protein when all things are created equal. If you and your twin were burning the same amount of calories, doing the same amount of exercise, had the same activity level, ate the same thing every single day, except you did one thing, you replaced carbs and fats with more protein, you would
Okay.
kick your twin's ass. So at the end of the day, you have to have adequate protein. So I go back to the quest, Dave, every single time. And now you're
Okay.
only required to do 10,000 steps. So when life happens, like Mike Tyson says, and you get punched in the face, just go on a quest. Calorie
Yeah.
deficit, water, exercise, sleep, protein.
So calorie deficit, water, exercise, sleep, and protein. So we pretty much do these now anyway. So now it's just a matter of changing your outlook and being more intentional with it, I'm assuming, correct?
The C and the E, right? That's where the people screw it up. The calorie
Yeah.
deficit
So,
and the
yeah.
exercise. The water's easy. The sleep
Yep.
is not easy, but it's common sense how to do it. And then
Right.
protein, all you got to do is prioritize protein first in every meal and add in a shake, and you're there. It's the C and the E that people screw up. They think they're in a
Right.
deficit and they're not, or they're not eating the right stuff. Their macros are wrong and they're misled. And the E side of things, most people, they lean into more cardio, and they think more ab routines is what's going to get rid of their belly fat. That's a myth. You need to be training with weights because that's what's going to increase your total daily energy expenditure, your
Okay.
TDEE. So
So and so like for me, I'm 60, just turned 60 this year. So like for people in that range, I love that you're, thinking getting lean after 40 because a lot of people probably come to you and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm already on the downhill. I don't have any, I'm already too far gone for this." So because the older 40 to 60 or beyond 40 will say, obviously people have to look at things differently than they did when they were in their 20s and 30s. Is that safe to say that we're having to look at this a lot different?
Well, I started the company when I was 40. Now I'm 53. And yes,
Okay.
so I would say that again, we don't want to play the blame game and blame our age.
Yeah.
Um, as a marketer, I like to throw rocks at the enemy, right? And the enemy is dieting and it is age, right? So when we do hit 40, the facts are the facts. You are going to start losing more muscle. So sarcopenia is going to kick in a little bit more. You're going to experience more of a hormonal decline, andropause, lower testosterone, somatopause, lower growth hormone, BMR declines, bone mass density, all that. So we have to be fighting against that. Um, and so that's why I teach people my 3-step hormone reset framework, where we just focus on hormones instead of dieting, because that way they can kind of build a lifestyle. So, yes, we do have to address it. And I do that through my C and my E, through the calorie deficit and the exercise. But we start with the cornerstone of weight training, because at the end of the day, that's what's really going to keep the weight off more than anything else, because muscle equals metabolism, right? You're going to burn more calories while you're sleeping at your desk, all that stuff. Where cardio is really only responsible for 5 to 15% of your daily calorie burn. So your
Hmm.
BMR, your basal metabolic rate, is responsible for approximately 70%. Well, how do you increase BMR, that 70%? Well, you lift weights and gain more muscle. So you're going to get much more bang for your buck swapping out some of those long duration cardio sessions for weight training, and you're going to look better naked in the mirror by doing so and fight against all the processes of aging I just talked about.
Sure, sure. Wow. And I mean, that's just how do you get past this is a question purely for me because how do you get past like the boredom of that? The boredom of lifting weights. For me, it's when I
I think the
try,
boredom of
excuse
cardio. When I tell people to replace cardio, weight training with cardio, man, that makes me drool. But again, it's
I
a
just
case of
get
case.
bored of
There's
it
cardio
all.
junk.
So,
Yeah, there's cardio junkies, and there's
yeah,
people like me personally. I'm not a huge cardio fan. I do it because I know it's good for me, and I try to make
yeah,
it productive while I do it.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't worry about cardio anymore. I get my 10,000 steps a day and I train with weights. I stay as lean as I am, but I've made a lot of deposits over the years in my body bank account. Right. So the way to get past it, really, Dave, back to your question, is just to make it interesting. Like that's why my hormone boosting resistance training protocols, I use rep ranges, rest periods, and intensity levels that you don't have time to be texting people, right? You don't
yeah,
have time to have a conversation. You're done in 35 to 50 minutes, you're cooked, and the
yeah.
anti-aging effect is profound because we create something called the lactate shuttle. And when you stimulate massive amounts of lactate, it actually creates something called mitochondrial biogenesis. So my workouts are designed to burn fat and build muscle at the same time while creating an anti-aging effect. And so
Okay.
lactate, which is the burn that we get when we do higher reps or heavier weights, is a
Yeah.
by they used to think it was a waste byproduct. It travels to heart and brain tissue, crosses the blood-brain barrier, enters the heart, sheds off old mitochondria when you create this effect. And so between the way the workout is structured, you don't have time to not be busy and have fun, right? You're not bored, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the problem with old school weight training is a lot of times it's like it's either one thing, it's like do a set, wait 3 minutes, do a set, wait three
Yeah.
minutes, or it's a boot camp, okay,
Yeah.
where you're just going one, and you're never stopping.
Sure.
Both of those are
Gotcha.
healthy and beneficial
Sure.
for you, but
Yeah.
they're not going to make you look amazing naked in the mirror like my protocols are.
Sure. Gotcha. Wow. Well, hey, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I kind of want to talk about the transformation of this from a mindset perspective because I think there's a lot here I want to kind of work through. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Shaun Hadsall from Hadsall. I always got these backwards. Sorry. I've just fixed
Good. Call me
whatever. I
Rip
mean,
Grandpa.
whatever it is. Hadsall, there. I mean, it's so easy. Sorry. The CEO and founder of Get Lean After 40 and AKA the Ripped Grandpa. So I want to address the people that are listening right now that are like, okay, I know I need to do something. But there's, let's face it, as a consumer, there's so many things going on out there. There's pills, there's equipment, there's drinks, there's protein, there's just everything out there. I love the calorie deficit, water, exercise, sleep, and protein. I love that piece. I gotta believe though, before you get into that, if you walk into that with a bad attitude, it's not going to be very successful. So what's the attitude? How am I retraining my brain through this thing? Because I don't want to do it begrudgingly. Because I think with the wrong attitude, and I really need your help here, with the wrong attitude, am I going to have success in this, Shaun?
No, of course not. It's
Okay.
just having a bad attitude towards anything, right? So, what you
So how do
focus
I
on.
help that attitude piece? Because I got to believe there's people listening right now that really want to have that six pack abs that you have. I know that I totally would enjoy that at 60. I justify it in my head and then it goes away really quick. So how do you start how do you start working your mind through this thing?
Well, starting out is like understanding the framework of my success. First of all, it's like, okay, focus fitness. I'm going to have stronger faith, family, friends, finances, and future by doing that. But I go back to my QUESP acronym, CWESP, and instead of going down the, diet and exercise path, we go down the mindset path and the
Okay.
mindset approach. And so C stands for consistency, not perfection, right? And so reality is, Dave, I'm going to eat bad sometimes when I shouldn't. I'm going to skip a workout sometimes when I shouldn't. I'm going to slack off. Okay. On social media, all the influencers make it look like their shit doesn't stink. But at the end of the day, we all have a secret evil twin and we want to snuggle on the couch with a blankie and, surf the internet all day. Right.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, we're going to goof up. And when we do, it's okay. Just forgive yourself, get your ass back up, dust yourself off, and start again tomorrow. Everybody's waiting for the perfect time. There's never a
Right.
perfect time, right?
Yep.
There's never going to be the right time. Just strive to be consistent, not perfect. The best diet pill that you can swallow is consistency, not perfection. So that's the C. So W is going to be, wins, counting your daily wins, right? So the more that you focus on your wins, whether it was fitness or any other area of your life, you're going to get more wins, right? So an example of this is we look at W for water in the diet and exercise side of things. Wake up
Yep.
every day. The first thing that I do is I guzzle 20 ounces of water right out of the gate so I have a win. So I'm already a fifth of the way to my water intake for my day. So
Gotcha.
want to focus on just 2 or 3 fitness wins that we want to achieve every single day and check off those boxes. And that will create called what? Big momentum. And once we get that momentum going downhill, right, you can't stop it. So the
Right.
E is example. So be an example. Who do you want to be an example for? Because if you have all your shit together in every other area of your life, but you're a fat ass in the mirror, I don't care what you say, that's going to affect people around you because it affects you. And
Sure.
so, who are you doing this for? Who you want to be an example for? And this goes back to your why. We always talk about our reason why, and it goes back to the beginning of this conversation that we had with my daughter. She was my why. She's the one who
Yep.
kept me out of the bottle of booze. She's the one who kept me away from those friends. She's the one who kept me going to the gym every day to win that contest. So, as far as like, so now we're at consistency, not perfection. We're at W for wins, counting our wins. E,
Yep.
be an example and find your reason why. S is going to be self talk, right? Be careful what you say and think because yourself is always listening. So if you're telling yourself, man, I'm fat, I'm never going to lose this weight, right?
Yep.
What you focus on expands, you're just going to get more of this. But if you tell yourself, you know what, I'm getting leaner and healthier every single day, and then you're going to get leaner and healthier every single day because what we focus on expands. So your
Sure.
self talk is going to be very important. And of course, if you're an entrepreneur and you're in business, you know how this can be self sabotage in business as well. So all this stuff applies to it, right? And the last one's going to be P for patience, right? This is where the blame game comes in because people aren't patient. I always say fat is like a tube of toothpaste. The closer it gets to the end, the harder it is to squeeze out, right? So the leaner you get, the harder it is. And so what happens with people, again, this goes back to what we talked about earlier. When we talk about having patience, is this is where the blame game comes in because people aren't patient enough. So yeah, fat can be stubborn, but not as stubborn as people are. And so you need to be patient on your journey and understand again, the journey is the destination. So it's all about just having a lifestyle process of boxes you want to check off. And at the end of the day, you know, I talk about, I'll end it with this. This is really good. I talk about the 80-20 rule of fitness versus the 90-10 rule of fitness. So when I first start working with high level guys, and I have my head coach Terrell works with our high level women, I tell them I need 90-10. Okay. 90% of the time, I need you locked in doing what I'm doing. I needed 3 to 4 hours a week of exercise, and I need you to follow the program. 10% of the time, you can screw it up. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll get you there. Now, when you get to where I'm at, where I put enough deposits in my body bank account over the years, it doesn't require as much time or effort or discipline
Sure.
to maintain
Sure.
what I have because I've been doing this shit for 25 years. So
Yep.
now I'm at the 80-20 rule. I can get away with being bad 20% of the time. So when the weekend comes, I want happy hour, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Saturday, Sunday, I want pizza, pasta, cake, and ice cream, I'm good to go. And I can still stay shredded. And when you follow my framework,
Yeah.
when you do that the right way, you actually increase your results because of the way that we set up the carb cycling, because it increases your fat burning hormones. And most importantly,
Sure.
Dave, out of anything, it improves your overall adherence. I mean, if you start a diet plan and you say to yourself, no cake or ice cream, no alcohol, no social life, funeral for my social life, right?
Yeah.
You're already going to fail because you're already viewing it as a daunting pain in the ass that you have to give up everything that you love. And so my
Right.
whole framework is I teach you how to get shredded in 3 to 4 hours a week without giving up your carbs, your cheat food, your booze, or your social
Sure.
life. It's all about
Sure.
following a strategy that caters to your age and your current hormonal condition.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So, for someone listening, just again, consistency wins, example, self-talk, and patience. Those are the pieces that align with what we talked about before the break. So, um, and I think that any of them, if you just take them by themselves from a business perspective, I mean, obviously, we want to be consistent just in our business. We hopefully are talking wins all the time in our business. Hopefully we have an example of what legacy we want to leave, who are we really doing this for, or why in your case. I think the self-talk, I want to kind of chat on that before we land the plane today, because there's a lot of people out there, that talk about this, and there's a lot of people that probably don't even believe in this. And again, I know for myself growing up, I didn't want to have this thought process that all I had to do was say it and it was going to happen, because there's kind of that, there's extremes, obviously, again, in that as well. Um, So talk to us about the self-talk piece. I mean, what is it that we need to be telling ourselves? Because I know, like we said, hey, it's 11 degrees out. Self-talk me. I can self-talk my way into not going outside today, you know? And it's like, do you just put on your big boy panties and just get out there and do it? I mean, is there some of that? I'd like you to help us with that self-talk if you could a little bit.
We have thousands of thoughts every single day, right? And so if we're not consciously aware of those thoughts and we just let the butterflies fly all over the place and wander, we can take ourselves in some really bad spots, especially as entrepreneurs. I mean, you know, we're six percenters, like we're 94% of the population, is not a high performing person. And
Yeah.
so we're a lot of times as an entrepreneur, we're alone on an island. I think the best thing to do is really have a ritual in place where you cultivate that every single day.
Okay.
So I have, my hour of power that I do. And sometimes it's just a walk on the treadmill, looking through my statement of purpose. Um, and then I'm a Christian, so obviously we can just look to the Bible for, on your thoughts and your thought life
Yeah.
and how it affects
Yep.
everything else. Or we could go to Joe Dispenza, the master of psychology, on the placebo effect and the psychology of your thought life, right? So whether you believe it or not, this stuff affects your life in every area. It's not just about fitness. And so I think starting your fitness journey by getting out an old picture of yourself where you look great. I don't care how old you were. Okay. If you were there once, you can
Yeah.
get there again or you can get close and just keep that. Make some copies of it and keep it in a place where you're going to see it multiple times a day to remind yourself where you're going and to act from a place of the goal already being achieved. So, being your future self now. Great book by Benjamin Hardy. I'm a huge fanboy of his. He's a behavioral psychologist. He talks about framing your past as it happened for you, not to you, right? And it's the same thing as your future. He's like, he talks about what is your 10x goal. And of course, when people think 10x, like, oh man, 10x, I'll never achieve that. But what he is saying is like, yeah, I know, but if you know what your 10x goal is, and every single day you behave as if that 10x goal has already happened, you
Yeah.
cut out everything that doesn't get you there. You eliminate it all, right? So that's why I tell people Quest, anything that doesn't do that, just it's a fitness rock being thrown at you. You don't need a cold plunge. You don't need red light therapy. You don't need all these biohacking tricks or a supplement or a pill. What you need is consistency. But at the end of the day, you do have to believe you can do it. And, just like everything else in life, it has to be practiced.
Yeah. Wow. Self-talk is really, I think, a great place to start. I don't know, again, if there's a spot to start, but I feel like there, to me, that's like I have to talk myself into this, or I have to sit down and count the cost, I think is a better way to look at it. Because again, January 1st is right around the corner. And so, I always laugh because I play a bunch of racquetball for a bunch of years, and like the first 3 weeks, the parking lot's full, right? And then then it kind of tapers away and it goes back to everybody goes back to their norm. So there
Right.
are some big, thought processes of, hey, January 1st, but like I like what you said, you know what, start today, you
Yeah.
know? And as we land this, are there a couple things here, that we could, Shaun, just like think of, do, or could we, is there, or do you have to jump in like this thing with both feet? Are there some things that we can do in the interim to see if we like it before we do it, I guess is the easier way to say it?
From a strategical standpoint and a tactical standpoint, outside of the mindset stuff, what I would do is the first thing I would do is just prioritize protein in your every single meal, get your water and your steps.
Okay.
And if you could just start there and build those habits for a week, um, because you could do everything. You could, like I just said, you could pop the pills, you could red light therapy, you could cold plunge it, you could do all this different stuff. But at the end of the day, if you're not getting the basics in place first, you're putting the cart before the horse.
Sure. Okay.
So you're putting a band-aid
So
on your broken bone. So it has to be approached as a
yeah.
lifestyle again. So
Yeah, and again, we have to walk before we run, and I love that, like so water, for instance, you mentioned 100 ounces a day, and steps you mentioned 10,000. So there's like either a yes, I made it, or no, I didn't make it. How do you do that? Yes, I did, or no, I didn't on the protein side. Is what should we be looking at from that perspective to try to get us as a goal in our protein?
Great question. If you exercise, we could look at all kinds of research studies at the, 1 gram per pound of your goal body weight is the amount of protein you should shoot for on a daily basis. We have high level men and women that come into the program. We also have a free school group where people can come in and learn all about this. We teach them how to just use 2 palms of protein or 2 decks of cards if you're a man, size protein, and a deck and a
Okay.
half of cards if you're a female in every single meal. So
Okay.
for a man, that's going to be somewhere around 40 to 50 grams. For a woman, that's going to be somewhere around 30 to 40 grams. If you do that 3 times a day and you throw in a protein shake, you're there. Now, if you don't exercise, your demands for protein are less. And zero
Okay.
point 0.6 grams per pound of your goal body weight seems to be the sweet spot. I always tell people lean into zero point 0.7, zero point 0.8 because anytime you overeat protein, your chances of losing weight increase. And they've done side by side studies, especially with women seem to respond even better to this, where they'll give one group of dieters 800 calories more a day in protein, and
Okay.
they will still lose more weight and gain more muscle, even though they ate 800 more calories per day. But because it was in protein and because of the thermic effect of protein, and because it decreases your appetite, right? It's just going to make it way easier to keep the weight off if you lean into a higher protein diet. And you don't have to worry about it clogging your arteries or leading to early death. Red meat does not do that. It's if we look at cohort studies, like we can look at meta-analysis of thousands of people across the globe. At the end of the day, if you're not eating processed red meat, you do not have to worry about any of that stuff. It's all linked to processed red meat, not regular red meat.
So protein, I always think of chicken. I mean, that's kind of the first thing that pops into my head when you think about that. So I'm envisioning one larger chicken breast a meal
Give me
for,
7 to 8 ounces for a man, 5 to 6 for a woman. 3 times a
okay.
day plus a protein shake, and you're usually there if you exercise. So
Okay.
it's funny. Some people will come in, oh, that's easy. Other people, man, that's really hard to get that much protein because it just
Yeah.
depends on how you currently eat. But I will tell
Right.
you this, because protein is the most satiating nutrient. I mean, what fills you up faster, a basket of bread or a big old plate of beef, right? I can hardly finish the ribeye, but I bring me another basket. The bread, I'll just
Right.
keep eating.
Yeah.
So we just prioritize eating protein first in every single meal.
Okay.
Over time, you're going to lose weight. Like it's a game changer for a lot of the guys that
Yeah.
come on board with us. They're like the week later, like, man, I'm never hungry now. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
because you're eating protein first and you're eating,
Sure.
you're eating it every meal. Plus, it's the only macronutrient that prevents muscle loss and promotes muscle gains when as we get older, over 40, 50, and 60. So that's the
Sure.
other.
Wow. There's so much here. I tell you, I have one last question before I let you go. What would your tip of the day be for somebody listening? Maybe it's something we covered already, or maybe it's just a culmination of everything. How do you put like a bow on this? What's one thing we can walk away with today?
I mean, honestly, my personal opinion is like just to stop chasing rabbits, stop chasing quick fixes, stop chasing pills, powders, and biohacking, and learn how to build a lifestyle of leanness. Approach it as a lifestyle versus, I mean, yeah, you can join a challenge to get yourself there, but at the end of the day, challenges end,
Yeah,
right? You can go ahead and buy the protein powders, the supplements, the fat burners, and all that. Great if they can get you going, but they're not going to build habits,
sure.
right? So how are you going to build habits? That's the key.
So when you talk about the shake, though, is that a protein shake where there is powder in that? Is that something that you're thinking is a good thing, or when you talk about a shake, tell me what that means for you.
I've had a protein shake, at least one protein shake or more every single day for the last 25 years, except if I'm on vacation.
Okay,
And the reason why is because it just makes it easier for me to hit my protein mark, and it's really hard to eat all that meat. That's why high protein diets are so great because you're never hungry, right?
yeah,
So that's
okay.
that's hunger's the death of every diet. So, but we do need
Just kept
carbs
that.
too. I mean, I know we don't have time for the carb cycling
Yeah,
stuff, but this is the big mistake people make. I want to make sure your listeners hear this because I think it's
yeah,
important. If we
yeah.
look at research, side by side studies of diabetics, okay? One group of diabetics, high carb, the other group, low carb. Protein and calories equal, the same.
Okay.
Both lose the same amount of weight, both have the
Yep.
same blood sugar, blood glucose, blood pressure, everything, cholesterol, results are exactly the same, high carb versus low carb. We can look at blue zones across the world. Many of these blue zones, they are free of disease. They have more people that live to 100 centurions than anywhere in the world, and many of them eat 60 to 80% carbohydrates in their diet. Now, they're not eating crap out of a box, so that's helpful, right? But they do eat a lot of rice and a lot of potatoes and stuff like that. And we
Yeah.
can look at these cultures. They do move a lot more than us, right? They do move. So I love giving context. I don't like making blank statements.
Sure.
But
Sure.
we can use one more example. Chris Voigt was the head of the Washington State Potato Commission, and he protested when they wanted to remove potatoes from the school lunch feeding program for
Okay.
the kids, right?
Yeah.
And so he ate 20 potatoes a day for 60 days straight, and that's all he ate. And he lost 22 pounds. His blood pressure was an outstanding. His cholesterol, his triglycerides, all his blood work was outstanding, eating nothing but 20 potatoes a day for 60 days in a row. Now, silliness, I would never
Oh my
recommend.
gosh.
But
Sure.
despite all the bad press, it proves once and for all that high carb foods like potatoes don't make us fat. At the end of
Sure.
the day, it's all about timing them and combining them the right way because glucose is a building block of our thyroid hormones. Thyroid hormones are a glycoprotein. So, in order for your body to convert T4 to T3 in the liver, which regulates your metabolism and your body temperature and your body weight, you need glucose. And so people who go on a keto diet or a carnivore diet, for example, not bashing them, they can and do work, but most of the time it's temporary. Research
Yeah.
shows 94% chance you're going to gain it back, even if you do lose weight, right? With that being said, a lot of those people need thyroid medication if they do it for extended periods of time because they're just not giving their body the glucose that it needs. And they actually make their cells less sensitive to insulin over time because you have no carbs in your diet. Now, the second you try to bring them in, you've desensitized your receptors to glucose. Now, the carbs spill over, you start holding more water because you haven't had carbs in your diet, and you think carbs are the enemy, so you blame the carbs instead of the root cause, which was
Sure.
you avoiding carbs for too long of a time. And
Sure.
are you going to really go the rest of your life without eating carbs? I highly
Right.
doubt it. So let's just make it part of the plan.
Yeah. 60 potatoes. Think the amount of sour cream, bacon bits, and butter that
You know what? He obviously lost
he
22
probably was a
pounds.
diehard and just ate those
So he was
without any.
doing it, he wasn't like, I know he had like several different ways that he cooked them, but I doubt he was
Yeah,
pouring all that crap on them every day. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lost the 22 pounds, right? So
exactly.
he was aiming to prove a point, right? He
Yeah,
had his
exactly.
why. He had his why.
Yep. That's awesome. Cool. Well, thanks, Shaun, so much for hanging out. If people want to learn more about you, they want to connect with you, they want to follow you, what's the best place for people to do that?
Ripgrandpa.com, and you're going to go right to my school community. You can join that for free. We'll give you a 14-day plan where I'll introduce you to my carb cycling methodology. We have coffee talks in there. We do weekly calls to onboard people. So we do have a premium group in there as well. And then all my handles on social are the Ripped Grandpa.
Awesome. That is so cool. Well, 10 grandkids definitely got to get you up to your 10,000 steps every day.
Gives
So
me a lot of
that's
whys too.
yeah, exactly. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing this information. I'm hoping that for people listening that it is at least a clarifier for some. Again, if you're concerned or nervous or confused, please reach out to the Ripped Grandpa and let's make sure and have a conversation with him and let's get you on that road back to being more physically fit. So, thanks for hanging out with us, Shaun. These are great tips and I'm gonna see what it looks like at the Ripped Grandpa, and I'd love to have that Ripped Grandpa 2 title. So I'll just be following in your footsteps. And again, appreciate all you're doing in this space.
great interview, Dave. Thank you.
Oops, they